Did you know the Bible describes a creature that breathes fire, or a prophet who saw a burning mountain fall from the sky? Most of us know the Sunday school versions of these stories, but the raw, original texts are filled with cosmic surrealism and apocalyptic warnings that sound like they're pulled straight from a modern sci-fi script. From the literal God in the flesh eating a meal with Abraham to the terrifying little horn of the end times, here are 10 Bible stories that will change the way you look at Scripture forever. 1. The Divine Bargain and the Rain of Fire. The narrative begins with a stark contrast between Abraham's humble camp in Mamre and his nephew Lot's life in the city of Sodom, a place described as being as lush as the Garden of Eden but rotting with moral decay. The story takes a supernatural turn when 3 men approach Abraham. He immediately recognizes their divine nature, bowing low because one of these men is Yahweh himself, accompanied by 2 angels. After consuming a meal of choice meat, God reveals a terrifying intent, to investigate and likely destroy Sodom for its outcry of sin. What follows is one of the most remarkable dialogues in Scripture, as Abraham bargains with the Almighty, eventually getting God to agree to spare the city for the sake of just 10 righteous people. The scene shifts to a nightmare at Lot's doorstep. The 2 angels, appearing as handsome men, are besieged by a mob of the city's inhabitants. In a moment of horrifying cultural and moral desperation, Lot offers his own daughters to the mob to protect his guests. The angels intervene with supernatural power, striking the crowd with blindness and dragging Lot's family away as the sky begins to fall. The text records a linguistic mystery: the Lord, Yahweh, rained fire, from the Lord, Yahweh, out of the heavens, suggesting a duality of the divine presence. As sulfur and fire consume the valley, Lot's wife disobeys the angelic warning and looks back, her body instantly calcifying into a pillar of salt, a permanent monument to a heart that belonged to a doomed city. 2. The Unknown God of Mars Hill. Centuries after the destruction of Sodom, the Apostle Paul walked into Athens, the intellectual capital of the ancient world. Surrounded by the marble shadows of the Parthenon and the legacy of Socrates, Paul was provoked by the sheer volume of idols. His preaching eventually landed him before the Areopagus, the high council of Mars Hill. This location held a strange secret. 500 years prior, a plague had devastated Athens. A man named Epimenides had been summoned to stop it. He released hungry sheep and built altars to the unknown god wherever they rested, as the Athenians feared they had offended a deity they didn't know. Paul, standing on that very hill, pointed to one of those ancient, nameless altars. He claimed that the unknown god they had ignorantly worshipped for centuries was, in fact, the creator of the universe. He moved the conversation from philosophy to the physical resurrection of Jesus Christ. While many of the Greek elite mocked the idea of a body rising from the dead, finding it unscientific and absurd, a few prominent members, including Dionysius, found the truth they had been searching for in the shadow of their own pagan history. 3. The Curse of the Tent. In the aftermath of the Great Flood, a strange and dark episode unfolded within the family of Noah. Having established a vineyard, Noah became intoxicated and passed out naked in his tent. His son Ham entered and saw his father's nakedness. To the modern reader, this sounds like an accidental intrusion, but many biblical scholars point to the Hebrew idiom to see nakedness as a reference to a much more severe transgression, possibly involving Noah's wife in an attempt by Ham to usurp his father's authority. When Noah awoke and realized what had happened, the consequences were oddly specific. Instead of cursing Ham, Noah placed a heavy curse on Ham's son, Canaan. This story serves as the biblical origin story for the Canaanites, the people who would later inhabit the land of Israel and become synonymous with the very depravity that Noah's family was supposed to have escaped. It highlights a recurring theme: even in a world washed clean by a flood, the darkness of the human heart can quickly resurface. 4. Behemoth and the Sea Dragon. During the climax of the book of Job, God finally speaks, but instead of answering Job's why, he describes 2 creatures that sound like something out of a prehistoric nightmare. First is the behemoth, a creature with bones like bronze and a tail that sways like a cedar tree. While often identified as a hippopotamus or elephant, neither has a tail resembling a massive tree trunk, leading many to speculate on a dinosaur-like creature. Then comes the Leviathan, an armored sea dragon that breathes fire and smoke. God describes it as a beast no man can tame, with scales so tight they are airtight. In the ancient world, the Leviathan was a symbol of chaos, the unpredictable, destructive forces of nature and life. By showcasing these monsters, God was making a point to Job: if you cannot even stand before these creatures I created, how can you expect to stand before me and demand an explanation for the chaos in your life? 5. The giants of the land. When Moses sent 12 spies into the land of Canaan, 10 returned with a report of pure terror. They didn't just see strong soldiers, they saw Nephilim, the sons of Anak. These were described as giants so large that the Israelites felt like grasshoppers in their presence. According to Genesis 6, these beings were the offspring of fallen angels and human women, an unclean union that corrupted the human gene pool. This story explains why God commanded the total annihilation of certain tribes in Canaan. It wasn't just a war for land, but a war against a supernatural corruption. Furthermore, ancient Jewish tradition holds that when these Nephilim were killed, their disembodied spirits became what we now know as demons, spirits wandering the earth, seeking to inhabit human hosts because they were never meant to exist in the first place. 6. The Tower and the Divine Partition. The Tower of Babel is often taught as a simple story about languages, but its implications are much stranger. Mankind, led by Nimrod, gathered in the plains of Shinar to build a ziggurat, a staircase to the heavens, to make a name for themselves. This was a direct rebellion against God's command to fill the earth. According to Deuteronomy 32, God's response was more than just confusing their speech. He divided the nations according to the number of the sons of God. This suggests that God essentially fired humanity, placing the different nations under the jurisdiction of lesser angelic beings, while he chose Israel as his own portion. These sons of God eventually accepted worship from the people, becoming the gods of the ancient pantheons, Zeus, Marduk, etc., while the foundations of the tower remained in the dust of Babylon as a testament to failed human unity. 7. The Beasts from the Sea. The prophet Daniel had a vision that feels like a modern sci-fi epic. He saw the great sea churning, and 4 beasts rose from the depths. A winged lion, a rib-eating bear, a 4-headed leopard, and a final, nameless monster with 10 iron-toothed horns. As Daniel watched, a little horn grew out of the 4th beast, possessing human eyes and a mouth that spoke arrogant things. This vision is a prophetic timeline. The beasts represented the empires of Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, and Rome. The little horn represents the final Antichrist, a world leader who will rise to power by subduing other kings. He is described not just as a politician, but as a supernatural figure who wages war against the saints of the Most High, ruling with absolute tyranny for 3.5 years before the Ancient of Days takes his seat in judgment. 8. The Gog-Magog War and the 7-month cleanup. The prophet Ezekiel describes a future invasion of Israel led by a figure named Gog from the land of Magog, identified by many as Russia. This coalition of nations descends like a cloud, but God destroys them through supernatural means: massive earthquakes, fire from heaven, and a plague of confusion that turns the soldiers against one another. What makes this story truly strange is the aftermath. Ezekiel notes that for 7 months, the land of Israel is busy burying the dead to cleanse the land. He describes specialized search parties who mark locations for professional burial teams to haul remains to a valley downwind. This remarkably clinical description has led modern scholars to wonder if Ezekiel was describing the protocol for a post-nuclear cleanup, where the dead and their equipment are too unclean, or radioactive, to be handled by normal citizens. 9. The Trumpets of Apocalypse. The Book of Revelation details a series of trumpet judgments that sound like a world gone mad. The first brings fire and blood that burns 1/3 of the trees. The second features a burning mountain falling into the sea, turning the water to blood. The third involves a star called wormwood falling into the rivers, making them bitter and deadly. When read through the lens of modern science, these events mirror the effects of a global nuclear exchange. A burning mountain matches the appearance of a mushroom cloud over water, wormwood reflects the chemical and radioactive contamination of groundwater, and the fourth trumpet, the darkening of the sun, perfectly describes a nuclear winter, where soot in the atmosphere blocks out 1/3 of the day's light. 10. The Throne Room and the Slain Lamb. The strangest story is the vision of the Apostle John as he is pulled through a door in heaven. He sees a throne surrounded by an emerald rainbow and 4 living creatures that are covered in eyes and have the faces of a lion, an ox, a man, and an eagle. The air is filled with the sound of holy, 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 and 24 elders cast golden crowns onto a floor that looks like a sea of glass. At the center of this cosmic storm is a scroll sealed with 7 seals, the title deed to the earth. When no one is found worthy to open it, John weeps, fearing the world will remain under Satan's dominion forever. But then, he is told the Lion of the tribe of Judah has prevailed. When John looks to see a lion, he sees instead a lamb as if it had been slain, possessing 7 horns and 7 eyes. This bizarre imagery is God's way of showing John the spiritual reality, that the victory of the universe was won not through a roar of power, but through the sacrificial blood of Christ, who alone is worthy to reclaim the planet. These stories remind us that there is a world beyond what we can see, a spiritual reality that is as beautiful as it is terrifying. But which of these 10 mysteries felt the most unexplained to you? Was it the mystery of the Nephilim giants, or the chilling description of the Leviathan? Let me know in the comments which story you want me to do a deep dive on next. If you enjoyed this journey into the unknown, hit that like button and subscribe to join us as we uncover more secrets of the ancient world. Thanks for watching. God bless you.